Hello, hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Colton and I'm a flight attendant based out of Toronto, Canada, and in today's video I will be going over the interview process for WestJet Encore as well as just some tips and tricks to help you with the interview process. So when I first applied, I believe the requirements were something like you had to be 18 years old, a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, and you had to speak French. So English and your second language would have to be French. Now they have opened that up to more languages, and I'm not sure if the requirements are still the same as when I applied, but that's just something that if you see the posting, just have a look right at the bottom and it'll tell you all the information that you need there. So I'm just going to give you the time frame as to when I applied and how quickly everything kind of developed, just to give you guys an idea as to how fast it can go or how long it can go as well, because it's always different depending on when they have the interviews, when the training dates are, etc. So for me, I applied, I think it was like July 9th or July 10th of 2017, and they got back to me pretty quickly and asked me to come in for a group interview, which was on July 17th, which was my birthday. So I was invited to this group interview about a week later, which went along pretty quickly. And how this was structured always varies from flight attendant to flight attendant. I'm not quite sure how they determine like the structure of the interview, but for me, I had to do the group interview first, then the face-to-face, then the phone interview, which tested my language skills, and then I was pooled, and then I was called for the interview. This isn't always the same structure. I really think it's just based on like how many people are applying, etc. So for me, this is the structure that followed. Don't be alarmed if it is different for you though. So the interview process started at one of the WestJet buildings, and it took about 2.5 hours. And before you get your panties all in a knot, can you hear that shoveling? It's snowing right now. So as I was saying, the interview started at one of the WestJet buildings. It was 2.5 hours long, but don't worry, it's not like 2.5 hours of just like drilling you with questions. It's a lot more easygoing than your typical interview, I would say, at least for the most part. So how it worked out first was that I had the group interview first, and this consisted of I think about like 15 to 16 people, and we were all collected into a room and we all did, you know, the typical icebreakers, just getting to know each other. And I think just like going around the table, saying our names, saying what we were doing before applying to WestJet, and maybe I think like one fun fact about us, something like that. So we did that for a while, and then we played some more games, but these games were actually geared more towards like what they would be assessing us for. So one of the games that we had to play was where they'd go around the table and each person would get a random topic and you'd have to talk about it for 30 seconds. So this was assessing your improvisation and spontaneity, and they're relating this to having to make impromptu announcements on board the plane. Whether it be for an emergency situation, you need to provide leadership, calm the passengers down and provide reassurance, or if it's just something like, you know, there's a delay and you have to keep the passengers updated every 5-10 minutes. This way they know that you can, you know, think on the spot. So we did a couple games like that, but for some reason that's the only one that I'm able to remember. After these games, we were called out one by one to do our face-to-face interview. And for me, my experience, because there were two different interviewers, so I don't really know exactly how it went for the other interviewer, but apparently it was a little bit different than the interviewer that I had. But for me, you know, it was just basically the run-of-the-mill behavioral questions. They would ask you a couple scenario questions, just to kind of gauge your critical thinking and problem-solving skills, and just other questions like, you know, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why WestJet? Why WestJet Encore? What makes you like, what will you bring to the table if we hire you as a flight attendant for us? Just those kind of questions. And then I believe at the very end of the interview, the last while was just basically like not an interview setting, but it was just everyone was sitting at our table and it was a presentation, so they just presented like what the company is, what they stand for. I believe they went over like pay information, benefits, and just kind of like what a typical flight attendant schedule looks like, just to give you all the information to make the decision if they do want to hire you, if you would like to accept it or not. So all in all, this took about 2.5 hours. It does seem long, but in all honesty, it went by really quickly and it was a lot of fun. So after this, if you passed this part, you had to do the phone interview for your language. So since all of us at the time were hired for French, everyone got a phone call. I think it was like two days later to test your French skills. And personally, like, I get so nervous when I have to do this kind of thing. So I like prepared my, like, what potential questions I thought that they would ask me, and I was like writing them down and reviewing them, and just kind of getting just getting myself prepared that way. And I know that they do it differently now. It's not a phone interview. I believe it's like an online testing system where it's not an actual person, but from what I've heard from flight attendants who were hired after me, basically they ask you, like, they give you a topic or something, and then there's an option to record yourself. So they present you with the question, and then you have like a minute or so to think about it, I think, and then you click record, and I think you only have one chance to record your response. And it does that for a couple different topics, so it's not just like basic, like, where did you learn French? It's apparently it was kind of complicated, like, you know, talking about agriculture, or like, you know, just really random subjects. I can't really speak more on it since I never actually did it myself, but in comparison, when I had my phone interview, it was so easy. Like, I really didn't have to worry because it lasted like 3 minutes. Like, honestly, my interview lasted like 3 minutes. They called and they're just like, hey, like, how are you? Good, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm gonna be switching in French now. They just asked me questions like, you know, where did you learn French? Where was your most recent vacation? And then they said, okay, so I'm going to switch between English and French. The first one, I'll read like an English sentence, and then you have to translate to French. And it was things like, do you have medication, or do you take any medication? Where does it hurt? You know, they're just trying to gauge, like, in a passenger flight attendant situation, if there's an emergency, that you know how to ask for these things. But I was only asked to translate like 3 things, and it was things like that, like, so easy. So I really didn't have to worry. But overall, it was a really good experience. The interviewers were really friendly and positive, and just made me feel very welcome. I'm not sure how everyone else felt, but that's just how I felt. But now I'll just get into a couple of tips and tricks that I have gathered throughout my interview process, and just to let you guys know so you can prepare for yours as well. The first tip I'm going to say is just be mindful of how you interact with others, as well as, you know, your posture, because there isn't just one interviewer, there's a couple others in the room, and I think some that aren't interviewing, but they're kind of just watching. And it's exactly that, just watching how you interact with others. Are you smiling? Are you presenting yourself well? Are you slouching all the time? Just what kind of energy do you give off? So just keep in mind that even though like someone will be giving a presentation, they'll be watching for these things as well. Second tip is honestly just be yourself. Don't try to fit a mold as to what you think a flight attendant should be like, because in the end, WestJet at least really cares about you showing your own personality on the airplane, and they don't want to take that away from you. They really enjoy individuality, and that's something that stands out for them and for the business. Although there are certain characteristics that they tend to look for, such as positivity, you know, are you smiling at people? Are you showing people respect? Also attributes kind of like adaptability, flexibility, because the job doesn't follow your normal 9-to-5 sit at a desk type of job. You're always on the go. You could be away from home for 4 to 6 days, you know, so they really need to make sure that you would be happy in this career. So even though that there's these certain characteristics that they are looking for, just be yourself and you will do just fine. My next tip for the face-to-face interview, where they ask all the behavioral questions, honestly, like for me, YouTube was my best friend. I just looked up, you know, behavioral questions like to prepare for an interview, and I just reviewed a couple ones that stood out to me. I didn't try to memorize like all behavioral questions, but you know, just ones that resonated best with me, and I just thought of my answer beforehand. And the way I prepare for an interview might be much different than the way that you prepare for an interview, but typically for me, I don't practice very much, whereas someone else might need to practice a lot. You know, with those behavioral questions, maybe it's best to talk to yourself, like looking at a mirror or videotaping yourself and then looking at it afterwards, and this way you have more of an outside perspective as to like what things that you'd like to tweak. So there are many different ways to prepare, but all in all, you know, I think YouTube is a great resource to look at other videos. This is why I'm making this video, so that way people can have a better idea as to the, you know, the kind of structure that the interview process goes through. And another piece of advice, if for some reason you don't make it through the interview process, there are tons of applicants. If you're not successful the first time, don't take it to heart. This happens all the time. Don't beat yourself up. It just means, just because you didn't succeed this time doesn't mean that you won't succeed the next time. And there have been tons of stories that I've heard about where people have tried for like 3 years, you know, not saying that'll take that long, but like there are certain cases where people have been trying for 3 years, and you know, it's something that they really want to do and they just kept trying. And WestJet says something like, just because you didn't succeed this time, it just means it's not the right time. So, you know, apply again. They really encourage you to reapply. To conclude this video, it is all a process. Make sure that you enjoy yourself, that you have fun. Just be yourself, let your own personality shine through, and you will do just fine. So I will be making another video for my current airline in my interview process with that. So stay tuned for that as well. Something that I am thinking about doing as well is just kind of like a Q&A, because I have noticed that a lot of people have asked me questions, or you know, have contacted me through Instagram directly just to ask me about X, Y, and Z. So if that is something that you guys are interested in, make sure to give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, or you can contact me on Instagram as well with questions. And then in the next video, one of the next videos, when I do end up doing a Q&A, I will look for those. So yeah, so make sure that you subscribe to my channel, press the bell notify icon, this way you are notified when I come out with new videos all the time, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!